Hey guys, and welcome to a new video. Today, the Game Balance Manifesto review, more or less. So this one got released, I think, yesterday night. It's just like New Zealand and Middle Europe. You know, it's like 12 hours apart. So yeah, for New Zealand, it's like like 10 in the morning. Let's go patch notes and stuff. You know, and for me, it's like midnight, something like that. Anyways, so today we're going to talk about the Game Balance Manifesto over here. So we're going to read through that and talk about it, or my personal opinion about certain things. Then based on, I would say, YouTube algorithm. Yeah, it's kind of weird like that, but hey, I have to pay attention to that as a content creator. So there got two things released, which in one hand is this game balance, and the other one is the revamp of the ascendancy classes, the changes like buffs, nerfs, and overhauls, basically, of certain ascendancies. So the plan is for the YouTube videos on the following days, like today, this one here, tomorrow, the video about the changes of the ascendancies. On Thursday, I want to cover the patch notes, and on Friday, I want to release my league starter video, more or less, and then from that day onwards, I want to make my, I would say, a classic league diary, more or less, where I just upload a video every single day covering my progress throughout the Atlas and what items did I get, what decisions I made on gear and stuff like that. So I think we're gonna be well covered for the next probably like a week, 2 weeks or something like that, with the video every single day. So as I said again, today Balance Manifesto, tomorrow then the upload from the Ascendancies, and then patch notes, and then the League Start video for my League Starter, more or less. Hopefully with Path of Building, I hope everything is getting updated. I think patch notes gonna hit tonight, I think. So yeah, probably then I have tomorrow time to just write down everything and make like a short form of the patch notes and stuff. Good. Enough talking. I would say let's jump right into the action and yeah, read some things. My English reading skills are super bad, but I'll still gonna try to do my best here, okay? So, as with every new league and expansion release, we're making a variety of balance changes to broaden the number of builds that are competitive in the endgame while lowering the power of specific mechanics that outclass the rest. We've outlined the most important changes below and discussed our reasoning and methodology. Specific values will be available to read tomorrow in the patch notes. Okay, so since this got released yesterday, I guess patch notes will come tonight. So I got spoiled a little bit just about the Necromancer changes, like Summoner changes, and the big nerf to, I think it was the Aura Stacker and Assassin and stuff like that. So, as I said, I'm pretty much going over this quite blindly. So, game balance in Path of Exile, Echoes of the Atlas, Ascendancies. In addition to reworking the Elementalist, Inquisitor, and Deadeye, we've made several changes to every Ascendancy class. Rather than going over every single change, here are the general philosophies behind the changes. Improve interesting stats on ascendancies while removing less interesting or less essential secondary stats. This brings these ascendancies close to the style and design intent for Path of Exile 2's ascendancies, where notable passives have fewer stats but are individually more impactful and interesting. For example, Quartz Infusion on the Raider now grants phasing at all times and 50% chance to dodge attacks and spell hits, so that's quite nice just for the defense layer here. Previously granted a variety of ways to gain phasing and damage increase in smaller attack dodge values. Rebalancing the power of notable within ascendancies, we want the choice between notables to be more flexible, with power moved away from generic bonuses. For example, Master of Metal has had one additional impale hit, and its chance to impale removed as the passive granted too much power, while inspirational now gives higher value of area of effect in place of its movement speed bonus to focus on more power on its aura investment. I think I've seen something. I'm not sure. I think that change was like, I think we're gonna cover that tomorrow anyways, right? But I just read through like was it, instead of 2 additional impale like hits last longer, it's only 1, so that's going to be mega nerf, more or less, I would say. I mean, mega nerf, but it's still like, what, 20% more or less damage by missing one more impale, which kind of sucks. But yeah, we're gonna see that tomorrow then on the video. So, rebalance the power between ascendancies to encourage players to re-examine optimal strategies. For example, the Trickster's Escape Artist node provided too large concentration of offensive and defensive powerful hybrid evasion energy shield characters, so they changed to dodge spell hits if your energy shield has been removed, okay? While the attack and cast speed per ghost shot has been slightly lowered. Yikes. The Slayer's Masterful Form node was seldom taken and wasn't providing enough power as it should, even for Frenzy Charge invested characters. So now grants +1 maximum Frenzy Charge instead of charge duration modifiers. Well, that's pretty good, because who cares about charge duration? Like, if I'm like a power charge stacking assassin, like, why do I need freaking 30 seconds long power charge duration if I'm permanently sustaining them anyways? So, reallocate stats between ascendancies, passives, and change the layout or bonuses. Wait, can you actually see that? Yeah, okay, so we're fine. It would make the ascendancies more attractive to a wider range of character builds. For example, the Chaos Cold Damage over Time Multiplier and Occultist Withering Presence and Frigid Wake instead grants more Chaos or Cold Damage instead, making these nodes useful for on-hit based Chaos and Cold builds while leaving the node similar powerful for Chaos and Cold Damage over Time builds. I really like that change, I really do. Aura Stackers, oh, now we're gonna get to the good things here. As new mechanics have been introduced and players have optimized builds, characters using multiple auras have grown significantly in power both offensively and defensively. These builds moved above our acceptable top-end level of power. The addition of altered quality effects and aura gems, which added extra effects to auras, were a large contribution to this. We have made a few radical changes over here. Well, before we read over the changes, I just have to say, I hate Aura Stacker, okay? And not because I actually hate it to play it, because when I play it, I actually enjoy it, just because it is that powerful. But I always said from the day one on, basically back in the days with the, the Herald Stacker, and then Aura Stacker, and now Alternate Quality, which was a massive boost to Aura Stackers, because, like, I would say Path of Exile is, like, from my understanding, a more single-player-oriented game. Even though we have the economy and the group play and stuff, but I would say group quantity is some kind of abusing mechanics. But most of the time, or I would say most of the players are actually just solo grinding their maps. So any kind of, like, aura with quality was always like increased aura effect, you know? And if you don't have friends to play with, then aura effect is completely useless. And what the alternate quality made was just like giving all these aura effect changed into something good, like reduced mana reservation, increased damage, something like that. So it was a big buff to the aura stackers as well, like to a lot of other builds too, right? But, you know, aura stacker is just like too strong. Like, no build with a lot of currency can make that much damage as an aura stacker, and no build with a lot of currency can be that defensive as an aura stacker. An aura stacker has the most damage and the most tankiness, you know? Like, even if I play a Juggernaut with like freaking 1,000 Exalts investment and like, I don't know, like 11 endurance charges and stuff like that, there is no way this guy can be tankier as my Transcendence Aura Stacker from Lost League, for example, with like an effective life pool of like, what, 3 million HP or something like that. It is just like, you know, I mean, there is like pro and cons about that. A lot of people say, yo, if I spend 1,000 Exalts on a character, I want to have it as godlike as possible, you know, but I'm just saying, if you stick 1,000 Exalts into an Aura Stacker and you stick 1,000 Exalts into some, I don't know, like any normal build, more or less, right? The Aura Stacker will be so much more powerful, and that's just unfair in that regard. But this is just my 2 cents, so I really welcome the Aura Stacker nerfs. But in the other hand, I know that the community will probably not enjoy it in that regard. Anyway, so Aura alternate qualities, the granted you and nearby allies extra effects have had significant value reductions. We believe the general cause, especially when playing solo, these will still be desirable given the regular quality effects and aura gems provide very little in most scenarios. Yeah, as I just mentioned. This is something that will be revisited in the standard quality bonus grant by all auras is changed in the future. Okay, this is not bad at all, because as I just said, aura quality is just like Area of Effect, and if you play solo, you don't care about this, so it's kind of completely useless at this part. So, small passive skills on cluster jewels that grant increased effect of non-curse auras from your skills and increased effect of your curses now grant 3% from 6% and 5% respectively. These desirable stats were... what is this? Scars? Oh god, what is this word? Scars. Whatever that means. On the regular passive tree, often requiring large investment to reach each cluster, but they became very accessible once cluster jewels were introduced. After this change, using multiple aura cluster jewels together should be less efficient relative to the regular passive tree, which is true. We also have adjusted the cluster jewel notable passive Stalwart Commander and First Among Equals, as they also were providing too much accessible aura effect. So this is actually a very well done change in my opinion, because the way an aura stacker works, you probably have like some... If I write this down real quick so it's easier to understand. These numbers that I'm writing down here might not be 100% valid, but it's just like, the purpose is just like to show people how it's actually working and why this nerf is actually huge. So let's take, for example, Purity of Fire, right? Purity of Fire at a certain level gives you maximum fire resistance, right? I think on level 23, I think it gives you, let's say, level 23, I think was 5% maximum fire resistance. So what happened with an Aura Stacker, so basically you had 75%, and then with a Purity of Fire you have 80% maximum resistance. So the way it works with the Aura Stacker is more or less, you're like getting more and more aura effect, right? And there is like thresholds and like 100% increased effect of non-curse, like effect of aura. Let's call it effect of aura, right? And then you have like a 200%, a 300%, a 400%, a 500%. So the thing is, this is just boosting the maximum cap over here, right? And this is something that just should not be, in my opinion. If Purity of Fire, the skill gem itself says, okay, on level 23, you reach the 5% maximum fire resistance, and if you have a Purity of Fire level 29 or 35, it will still be 5% because this is the cap of the gem, right? But you could increase that cap by having aura effect. So the 5% actually at some point turned here into 6%, and on like 300% aura effect, you got up to like, I don't know, like 8% or whatever, you know? And then a certain stage, and I think it was 400% aura effect as far as I remember, you had 90% max fire resistance. This is hard cap though, you cannot get higher even if it would have 1000% increased effect, right? So the thing is, on level 23 Purity, you have 5% max resistance. If you reach the 400% aura effect from cluster jewels, your gear and stuff like that, you could actually get this one up to 15% more or less, because you're then getting hard cap. And this counts for Purity of Fire, Ice, Lightning, and all auras that actually have a skill or gem cap, and you could like overdo it with the aura effect. So what that means is when they nerf all the aura effect nodes on the tree, you're probably never gonna get to this stage, because I think like the top-notch aura stackers did have about 500% aura effect. I had a hard time getting 400%. So this is really like multiple mirror tier gear. This is more or less like probably a 2-3 mirror aura stacker has somewhere about 400% aura effect. Might be a little bit cheaper though, but this is like the base value. After this point, you're like being like freaking god mode, right? So these are the tiers, like every, the threshold reaches basically. And I think with these changes, you're gonna maybe get to 300% quite, like, probably gonna switch up, right? Maybe the multi-mirror tier will have the 400%, and the normal aura stackers will somewhere be between 200 and 300, means they will not be res capped at 90%, they will not have their thresholds for other auras and stuff like that. So I think that's going to be quite massive, and then the question is it actually worth doing it? I mean, there is still a lot of like aura stacker mains out there. I know a couple of those myself. They are playing aura stacker since the beginning, and they never change back. They even play aura stacker on League Start. So we're gonna see how this one works out for my friend here, if he's still going to play the aura stacker, or if he just says like, with that amount of aura effect that you currently can get after the nerfs, it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. It probably will end up being like a super expensive character that is comparable strong to a mediocre invested meta build, for example. And if this happens, well, I'm super happy about that, because as I said in the start, with the changes to Aura Stacker, like having the most damage, the most defense, all combined in one character, and all the other builds are like, whatever, you know, this is just something that should not be in the game. I'm like criticizing this since the Herald Stacker and the Aura Stacker is a thing, and finally we have those changes, although, as I know, there's a lot of people that will probably just hate this change and probably will stop Path of Exile, because now it's a shit game. They ruined the only build that I could ever achieve Saurus 5 kill with my 10,000 Exalt Aura Stacker. Yeah. But that just opens up a lot more variety about meta builds and off-meta builds, and I'm looking forward to that one. So, Impale mechanics. So, can you see that? Okay, you can. So, by using the Impaler Keystone in combination with the Call of the Steel skill, Warcry-based characters could deal unreasonably large amounts of damage with a single hit, followed up with Call of Steel. The Impaler Keystone now prevents Call of Steel from removing impales from enemies for 4 seconds after you impale them, similar to how it prevents the enemies being impaled again. This allows builds to retain some interesting interactions, but prevents all damage being completely front-loaded before a boss had a chance to act. For all builds utilizing Call of Steel, the Lord of Steel unique jewel provides the 2 large damage bonus from a single item. The Lord of Steel jewels that granted increased reflected damage now grant 20 to 25% increased reflected damage to all players to invest in Call of Steel without requiring a specific unique jewel. The Swift Skewering passive tree cluster has been adapted to accommodate a new notable passive, Blade Sovereign. This half of the cluster allows players to invest in Call of Steel maximum shards, use speed, damage, and area effect. So I can only say a little to that. I never played any of those meta builds, more or less, that came out at the last league, basically, with the one-shots with Call of Steel. The how are people calling those big two-handed weapons? Bonk sticks and bonk builds and whatever, you know, it was like insane. But I've never played it. I'm not allowed to judge any of these changes. But since it was kind of a meta build, since on the races and stuff, like everybody went with these bonk juggernauts and just destroyed the game more or less. Was it champion? I think it was Juggernaut. I'm not even sure about that, so I can't really say something about this part. So, minions. Ray, Spectre, and Golem minion builds usually outclass other minion alternatives and are one of the most optimal mid-investment builds, so we've made significant reductions to their power. Holy shit, yes. Ray Spectres will now be monster level 72, at gem level 20 from 76, have lowered accuracy to roughly match Race Zombies at the same monster level, and slightly slower monster level scaling past gem level 20. In addition, we have made minor changes to the Day of Tool Spectres. Okay, that's actually a minion, so I was like confused here. Which no longer grant reduced damage taken to allies and grants it a slightly less chance to dodge attacks and spells for their Snow Cloak skill, as this ability was providing more defensive power than some of the most effective player defense skills. The Night Throw skill used by Syndicate operatives is no longer considered as a spell, as they created unintended uses by combining both attack and spell supports while ignoring their penalties. Carrion Golems and Stone Golems have had their damage reduced at all levels, with Carrion Golems getting the more severe reduction as their power exceeded that from the other golem types, and Elementalist golem passives in general provide fewer offensive bonuses to golems, in part because the rest of the Elementalist now provides effects that can increase damage taken by enemies. The minion-related cluster dual notables Rotten Claw and Renewal had value reductions, as they provided effective damage multiple at high values. We've made buffs to the damage skeleton mages, the speed of Unearth, and the offering effect of the Leash of Oblation unique belt, as they were not as powerful as other alternatives. Good. That's about the golem stuff. So, some words over here. I remember back in, what was the league? Blight League, I think it was. Some of may still remember that league, but it was the Ray Zombie meta, more or less. Like, everybody was playing Summoner. There were, like, the AFK builds for blighted maps. You know, you just stand in the middle, and you're carrying golems, or at least your zombies. You had, like, freaking 20 of those, or even more on high budget. they cleared everything. You know, the damage was so ridiculously insane, and all you had to do is stand there and loot, right? Then the Baron got nerfed, and some other core mechanics of the zombies got changed, and then it swapped over to the Carrion Golems, and the Carrion Golems have been like the go-to build, I would say, for summoners, alongside with Spectres, but I've never played Spectres, but I did play Carrion Golems, so I can only judge the Carrion Golems. But I'm just saying, back in the days, there were like Ice Golem builds, you know? There were like Flame Golem builds. I mean, I tried the Flame Golems back in the days. It was actually insane in terms of clear, but my PC just couldn't handle all the flame explosions and stuff like that. So... And last league I saw especially, there were like 2 summoner builds that like stood out in front of like everybody else, was the Carrion Golems and the Stone Golems. And probably you have seen the videos as well, where a Stone Golem Aura Stacker mixture, something like that, as well as Carrion Golem Aura Stacker. Dude, especially the Stone Golems, they could tank the Saurus storms while just standing in there, and they had so much regen and so much power. It was just like... It's stupid level. You know, you have your Aura Stacker that can just play like any kind of like spell. Then you had the, what else? It's the one that I played last league with the Replica Dreamfeather armor stacking. That pretty much was the Aura Stacker for melee builds. And if you said like, you know what, I still enjoy Summoner more, then you had the Aura Stacker Carrion Golem character, right? So... every single build had a crystallized Aura Stacker variation, and they were just so superior. And back in the days, I know that there were a lot of like Ice Golem builds. I played them myself, like Golementalist. Probably some people will still remember. Like, they're gone, you know? There's only Carrion Golem and all the rest is shit, right? Or now Stone Golem. So, and especially those 2 are now getting nerfed. So, yeah, that's accurate, right? There's always like this it's hard to balance things, right? But you always have like the mid part, right? And then you have like Ice Golems and stuff like that, a little bit lower than the mid part, and then your Carrion Golem is right up here, right? So what you want to do is either buff the others to be more in the middle side and nerf the high end to get more down. So at some point, you want to have a balanced game, right? Where every build is playable and no build really stands out in terms of like being super strong or super weak, right? You just want to have this small line here where you say like, dude, I want to have my player base to choose whatever. Hey, if they like a lot of Fire Golems, then go for Fire Golems, because they will have more area of effect but less single target. If people are like, yo, I want to have Carrion Golems because I like how the MTX looks like, you know, there shouldn't be any like downside of picking a skill, because in the end, you should play what you enjoy the most, and you shouldn't be like... I would say that in the best way. If there is only one skill that I still think of that just isn't right, which is Spectre Shield Throw, right? It's a very cool skill. It's shit since the ages, and yeah, I would still waiting for buffs, but maybe this time, right? But I'm just saying, like, as a player, I want to choose a skill and go with it and still be able to be strong in the game, rather than saying like, yo, there is 3 builds that are matter, and with those... we can clear all content with eyes closed and being AFK for the majority of the time, and all the other builds are shit. So, yeah, GGG is doing a great job trying to adjust those problems with the Aura Stacker and with the Summoner build. So, what else do we have here? Improving underused skills. Oh, now it comes back to Shield Throw buff. Dude, by 1000% increased damage, dude. While lowering the power of specific abilities, we've also improved the power of others that haven't seen the limelight. Okay? Recently, like... I'm always wondering about some of those words. Like, my English skills are not bad, you know, but sometimes I feel like completely clueless, whatever. Recently, to bring them up to more competitive level, we have buffed more than 40 underrepresented skills. Spectre Shield Throw notes that if a particular unloved skill has not been touched, Spectre Shield Throw, that doesn't mean we've forgotten about it. Spectre Shield Throw, GGG. Rather than we believe that numerical tweaks alone won't be sufficient to provide the experience the skill could offer, and we're intending mechanical changes to the skill sometime in the future. Patch note teasers: Scorching Ray has base cast time, blah blah blah. Scorching Ray, Cobble Lash, Frost Bomb. I think the Spectre Shield Throw buff will come in the patch notes. I'm just gonna skip that because we're gonna cover that in patch notes anyways. So other skill changes. Earth Shatter, now slightly more variance on the insta spikes appear from initial slam locations, and the explosion radius for spikes has been slightly lowered. Yikes. The intent of these changes is to reduce the spike explosions overlap, particularly on large single targets. Yikes. Contagion has had a small reduction to the skill's radius. Yikes, come on! In combination with Essence Drain, it has consistently been one of the most efficient skills to clear packs of monsters. Hell yes, good old Essence Drain. Contagion. Other changes. We've made a variety of small changes to be aware of, often solutions to specific balance concerns as our result of ascendancy changes. Flask charge on critical strikes cooldown. The internal cooldown of effects that grant flask charge critical strike has been lowered from 0.2 to 0.1. Yeah, obviously, because nobody used that. Making them more consistent and effective ways to generate flask charges. This change was made as a part of improvements to the Master Surgeon notable on the Pathfinder, but will affect all modifiers that grant flask charges and critical hits like Surgeon's Flask modifier. Well, if this will change anything, I'm not sure. Unique items. Replica Nebulas provide too much potential damage for a single item. Who could have known that? Particular for builds that didn't care much about the survivability, now has 50% to 20% increased cold damage from 3 to 5 per 1% missing cold resistance up to a maximum of 300%, and 15 to 20% increased fire damage from 3 to 5 per 1% missing fire resistance up to blah, 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 can also be applied while dual wielding. Wait, what? Now has 15 to 20% increased cold damage. Hey. Wait. Provided too much potential damage for a single item. Now has 15 to 20% increased cold damage from 3 to 5. Isn't that like an Omega buff? Like 5 times higher value? Up to maximum of 300. Oh! That's new, up to a maximum, because as far as I know, that was never capped. It is capped on the normal Nebulous, because you cannot get more than 90% maximum resistance, but on the negative side, you could have like negative 1000 resistance, right? Which gives this one like unlimited scaling. But now it's a maximum of 300, so this is the change. I was like, wait a second, they're actually buffing the value by 5 times, so where is this a nerf? There's like an Omega buff here. But yeah, making it capped makes sense then. Replica Alborn's Warpath now runs 1 to 80 chaos damage per 80 strengths, previously 50, and was providing too much global added damage compared to other attributes stacking items that weren't weapons. Martyr of Innocence and Disintegrator, the 2 staffs, no longer grant added damage with spells, now grant the Battle Mage keyword instead, which grant added spell damage equal to damage of your main hand weapon. These have been changed because of how powerful their damage would be if players had Battle Mage from Inquisitor reworked Instrument of Virtue Node. Yeah, that's probably just like some, I wouldn't really say balancing, but just like, you know, when you change some things about or get new mechanics in the game, you have to adjust some of the already existing mechanics so they don't like buff up and multiply themselves to have like ridiculous amounts of power, which always happens. Like every single league, players find out other ways to use new items to make old stuff like even more stronger and ridiculous, and those are the things that usually get hotfixed quite fast. So, and then we have alternate quality changes. A small number of alternate quality effects have been changed due to specific problematic interactions or because they provided too much power. Anomalous Arctic Armor no longer triggers when hit effects from reflected damage. This is the case to Anomalous Arctic Armor alternate quality, and the Hitless Unique Sword could permanently freeze most monsters in the game. Yep. I tried this out myself, Arctic Armor on, like, what is it, the Herald of Thunder Auto Bomber and stuff to permanently freeze bosses. That was great. Divergent Plaguebearer, oh no, no longer grants reduced chaos damage taken while incubating. It provides too significant a defense bonus, particularly for builds utilizing the Divine Flesh Keystone, especially when combined with quality enhancing effect. It now causes the Plaguebearer buff to have 0.5% poison damage over time multiplier while infected per 1% quality. I didn't even know Divergent Plaguebearer was a thing. I mean, it probably was too strong, but I didn't even realize because I wasn't really playing too much poison builds last league. And Anomalous Kinetic Bolt, Anomalous Plague Bearer, and Anomalous Scorch Arrow have been lowered in power to be more in line with the power of their other quality effects. Then, Far Shot. Let's just keep it over here. Far Shot is a part of changes to Deadeye Ascendancy. Far Shot has been changed. It now causes your projectiles to deal 20% less damage at the very close range, previously no penalty, up to 60% more damage at range of 70 or greater, previously 30% more damage as soon as the projectile reached the range with no upward scaling. This affects all the items that grant Far Shot, as well as the Deadeye Ascendancy. This makes the choice in playstyle between Point Blank and Far Shot a more interesting decision. This is something I really like. I hope that Point Blank gets buffed again as well, because now Point Blank, I think, gives you like 30% more damage. Now Far Shot gives you 60% with actually being more defensive, staying max range, which is like a lot stronger, right? And basically back then there were like 3 nerfs to Elemental Hit that, like, I really enjoyed playing Fire Elemental Hit Deadeye, and there were like 3 big nerfs, you know. They nerfed the numeric values of the skill gem, they nerfed the no, they buffed the elemental resistance of the enemy was the second nerf, and they also nerfed Far Shot and Point Blank from like 50% to like 30% or something like that. So there was a triple nerfs. Like back in the days, like, people love to play Elemental Hit. It was ridiculous at some power levels, so they had to get nerfed, but it was just too much. You can nerf a skill like 3 times in one go, and then hope that people are gonna be satisfied with it. And like, a lot of people don't even skill into Point Blank or Far Shot anymore, just because, like, yeah, for Far Shot makes sense because of speed clearing, right? But Point Blank doesn't really make sense too much anymore, because staying on range is far more quality of life anyways. And if Far Shot is now twice as good as Point Blank, I don't know. I probably think that they're gonna buff Point Blank again, but we're gonna see. Tailwind. As a part of changes to the Deadeye Ascendancy, the Tailwind buff now grants 8% increased action speed from 10%. The intent is to slightly lower the power of the influence modifier while keeping it similar powerful on the Deadeye. That's totally fine. Elemental Aegis effects improve the general strength of Aegis effects as a part of adding Primal Aegis to the Elementalist. All Aegis skills, such as the one granted by Magna Eclipses, no longer have their recharge timer interrupted by damage if the buff is depleted. This makes Aegis skills a much more reliable defense mechanics when regularly taking damage. Full details and numeric values of all the above changes and more will be available in the patch notes tomorrow. Good. So about the Aegis skills, I remember once using the Aegis, the Magna Eclipses on my League Starter on Essence Strain, which gives like insane amounts of like energy shield with the weapon from Delph, I think. Whatever it's called, Blood Limp or something like that. But I never really paid attention too much about this Aegis things. Maybe this will change this league with the revamps and the change on the Elementalist side of things. Probably gonna look into that later on in the league after my league start, because I don't plan to go Elementalist anyway. So all the things will be something probably later on that we're gonna find out how good certain things turn out. Yeah, overall, I really appreciate those changes. Like, I'm the last one is always, like, crying around. So I'm always seeing the positive side of things for the greater good of the game. And nerfing the Golems and Aura Stacker and changing some other things is just something that should have been in previous leagues already, but it wasn't. So now is the time to get that off the way. And as I said, don't worry, guys. If you're loving Aura Stacker, I think there will still be Aura Stacker builds. It might not be as strong, but in the other hand, they were already like 10, 15, 20, or even 100 times stronger than every normal build. So even if it loses a little, a bunch of power, more or less, I think there will still be Aura Stacker builds that will do just fine. But I just love the idea to generally have a bigger variety of endgame builds where people can play them on lower and higher side of budget things. Alright guys, I'm going to check now the Ascendancy, so that video will be uploaded tomorrow, followed by the patch notes and stuff like that. And yeah, thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.